This is SSN Evening News.
Good evening and welcome to the SSN Evening News. I'm Vicki Newton. Election Day is less than a week away. Even if your ballot isn't cast in one of the major races, there are plenty of reasons to take notice. Even if you think this midterm political arena is pretty lackluster, still reasons to participate. Tonight, Karen Kaifa takes a look at 5 big ones.
Maybe your vote won't decide the political fate of a Senate leader with 30 years on Capitol Hill.
Good luck in this race.
Like Kentucky's choice between Republican Mitch McConnell and Democrat Allison Lundgren Grimes. And maybe you don't have a race that could offer clues to key 2016 presidential primaries, like New Hampshire's contest between Democrat Jeanne Shaheen and Republican Scott Brown. But there's still plenty at stake, even in places without the year's hot races. Most obviously, the congressional balance of power, which will have a direct impact on the agenda for the final 2 years of the Obama administration, especially if Republicans flip the Senate in their favor. That plays into how Americans feel about where the country is headed. A recent CNN ORC poll found 30% of Americans very angry and 38% somewhat angry about the way things are going. The government's response to Ebola became a top concern in recent weeks, but the prevailing domestic issue remains the economy. The last unemployment figure before Election Day hit a 6-year low. Consumer confidence hit a pre-recession high, but wages and income are stagnant. The rise of ISIS and a U.S.-led effort to stop them put foreign policy in the pre-election spotlight. And like most midterm votes, the outcome will be just as much about shaping the presidential contest 2 years from now as it is about the immediate future. In Washington, I'm Karen Kaifa.
Now, when it comes to social media, Twitter and Facebook remain the most popular avenues, but are they making a real difference in this year's midterm election? Social media is appealing for 2 reasons. Well, for one, it costs less than traditional TV campaign ads, and it's a way to reach that key demographic of 18 to 29-year-olds. The social media outreach gives an idea of what to expect in 2016, but it may not have a big impact this election day. Pre-midterm research found a disconnect between young voters' political activity on social media and political action offline. When the SSN Evening News continues, more on the investigation into the cause of a plane crash in Wichita, Kansas.
You're watching SSN Evening News. This is SSN Evening News.
Topping our news digest, 4 people died when a small plane crashed into a building near the airport in Wichita. Firefighters battled a horrific fire for a number of minutes, and they are now working to account for any employees and visitors who may have been in that building. The plane lost an engine on takeoff, and that caused it to crash. No information has been released yet on the identities of those on the plane or in the building. A legal showdown tonight over an Ebola quarantine. The state of Maine wants a healthcare worker who treated Ebola patients to stay home and is considering legal action to enforce the quarantine. But the nurse says she won't stop fighting for her rights, even if she has to go to court. Mary Maloney has the story.
Not long ago, Casey Hickox was fighting Ebola. Now she says she's fighting Ebola fear.
You could hug me, you could shake my hand. There is no way that I would give you Ebola.
But the state of Maine wants to keep Hickox home until November 10th. If she doesn't comply, the state says it will go to court.
I'm not willing to stand here and let my civil rights be violated when it's not science-based.
But Maine health officials point to the case of Dr. Craig Spencer, who walked around Manhattan for days before being diagnosed with Ebola.
There are other cases where individuals have not tested positive, did not believe that they were symptomatic, and quickly developed symptoms while they were out in the public.
Rigid requirements could prevent needed aids from fighting the deadly virus.
You know, these are people who have gone and endangered their lives to work with people who have very limited resources. So to make it more difficult and to treat them as if they're a potential problem as opposed to a public asset, I just think it's a shame.
Hickox says the U.S. Constitution and science are on her side and vows to challenge any legal action.
I don't want to hurt anyone in the public, but I don't think this is an acceptable line to be drawn.
I do not understand why this common sense approach to ask someone to stay in their home for 21 days during the incubation period, why that is not a reasonable request.
I'm Mary Maloney, reporting.
Many caregivers in West Africa have died after contracting the virus. So here's the question. If the West imposes strict quarantines on those coming home after fighting the disease, will it discourage others who want to help? Nick Robertson reports from a training center in Geneva, Switzerland.
It can probably be slightly tighter.
Last-minute checks, then instructions.
Today, your task is to take a blood sample of a patient.
Blood from an Ebola-infected patient.
This is also the last moment to give each other a hug because it's a non-touching mission.
This mission, in fact, a training mission before deployment to West Africa.
The tube goes into the bag, you drop it.
And could save these doctors their lives. All of them volunteers, first time fighting Ebola.
The mask was fogging, so you cannot really see. You cannot really move normally, so yeah, it feels strange. It feels very difficult to work.
I've done work in military areas, I've done work in surgery, and we've used spacesuits in surgery before, but this is an order of magnitude more complicated, and it's an order of magnitude more dangerous.
Good training could not be more important. So far, according to the World Health Organization, healthcare workers count for 1 in every 20 Ebola infections. That's about 450 people so far. More than half of them died. A statistic that scares many from stepping forward to help.
We still need to find more people. We still need to mobilize more funding, more human resources. And we still need to scale up.
This Red Cross training facility in Switzerland is a rarity. It only got up and running last week. 32 volunteers on this 5-day course. WHO experts estimate almost 1,500 international healthcare workers are needed in West Africa right now, and they're well short of that.
You have to go all in the beginning with all the resources that you have to get on top of the epidemic.
The fear here now is that new regulations in some US states requiring 21 days of quarantine for anyone who had contact with Ebola patients in West Africa will hurt recruitment.
People who spend time deployed in the field, the last thing they want is when they come home, they're not even being able to go to their families.
For those about to put their lives on the line in Africa, even stronger criticism.
I'm quite cross with some countries about the attitude that they've taken. It's almost they were waiting for an excuse for a bit of xenophobia and to make a fuss about it.
I think that strict quarantine restrictions are not useful, are not effective, and shouldn't be put in place.
Without these volunteers and many, many more like them, the Ebola epidemic is set to grow and spread its global contagion. Nick Robertson, CNN, Geneva, Switzerland.
The largest Ebola vaccine trial on humans is about to get underway in Switzerland. 120 people will receive the vaccine, and researchers will try to determine if the vaccine is safe, and they'll determine the correct dosage. Healthcare workers on the way to West Africa will be among the first to receive this vaccine, and they will receive the vaccine. They will be monitored in Switzerland for 2 weeks, then continue monitoring in the hot zone. They hope to have some results in December. 2,000-degree river of lava could swallow a dozen Hawaiian homes in the next few days, and there's nothing that can be done about it. The director of Hawaii County Civil Defense says the flow advanced overnight. He says the lava speeds up, it slows down, but on average, it's moving at a rate of between 15 and 30 feet per hour. This slow-moving lava flow began moving toward Pula in June when a volcanic crater vented, releasing the liquid rock. At least 10 people have been killed and many more are feared dead after a massive landslide in a village in Sri Lanka. The Red Cross says 192 people are still missing and bad weather is hampering the search efforts. The landslide buried about 150 houses in that village. The Coast Guard is seeing an increase in Cuban immigrants trying to reach U.S. shores. A look now at what the Coast Guard is facing.
We got eyes on them.
A dramatic scene plays out in the Florida Straits.
You got him, Chris? Yeah, I got him.
A United States Coast Guard plane spots this small boat packed with 29 Cubans, including several women and at least one young boy. The boat is taking on water.
So the Norvell is coming on scene.
Yet when the Coast Guard cutter Margaret Norvell arrives to help, the group's leader refuses to cooperate.
They are being non-compliant and claiming that they are en route back to Kenya, over.
Eventually, the group gives up and gives in.
Oh yeah, they got him now.
Joining the growing number of migrants rescued while making this dangerous and sometimes deadly journey to the U.S.
We've been seeing the highest migration levels that we've seen from Cuba and Haiti in the past 5 years.
Roughly 10,000 migrants have been found in this area just this year. That's more than 3,000 than the year before. The biggest spike, Cubans, whose numbers have doubled since the Castro government lifted travel restrictions in 2012.
You have to be pretty desperate to jump, to go into the open water and just try to make it, no?
Yeah, it is.
I mean, it's dangerous. It's very dangerous.
Most of it is economic. They're looking for a better way of life.
Lieutenant Kirk Fistick is the commanding officer of the Norvell, one of the agency's newest high-tech ships in the Coast Guard's 7th District.
This is the front line of Coast Guard operations. This is where the action happens.
We wanted to get a first-hand look at the action. So we spent a few days on board the Norvell, and what we saw was sobering. A few hours into our journey, the Norvell takes on 10 migrants. The lights of the U.S. shine in the distance. This is the closest this group will get.
One more!
A doctor is concerned the last one may be suicidal, refusing to eat after telling the Coast Guard this was his 9th attempt to reach America.
So you see, they've put the man on the stretcher on the cutter safely, but it doesn't appear that he's responding at this point. It's unclear what they're going to do with him. We know that the remaining 9 migrants are all in the same area on this boat, and they'll probably be here until the process runs its course.
Yeah, I got him just off the port bow.
In the early morning hours, another group of Cuban migrants is found barely moving, idling in what appears to be the middle of nowhere.
Taking my approach.
Each one is given a life vest before being transferred to the cutter. Their small boat is then filled with gasoline and shot up with a .50 caliber machine gun. A fire sinks the tiny boat. On the cutter, the migrants wear Tyvek suits to stay dry. They're given red beans and rice to eat twice a day and a rubber mat to sleep on. Some interact with Coast Guard members like Ronald Garcia, a Cuban American himself.
It's just difficult to see the situation that they're in.
In all, we saw about 80 Cuban migrants in just 4 days with the Coast Guard, all of them with desperation in their eyes.
The video of a woman getting those cat calls while she walked down the streets of New York has gone viral. Shoshana Roberts is videotaped by a hidden camera as she walks the streets of Manhattan. She says she wanted to show people what women go through every day. Take a look.
I wanted to start a dialogue because this does happen to me on a daily basis. I've said to people it is a typical day, and it doesn't even illustrate everything that happens. It doesn't show the times in the past that my side has been squeezed, or that was just a single day.
Roberts says she's received a lot of support for that video, but she's also received some death threats. She told CNN the street harassment video obviously, quote, hit a nerve. It's been a very good couple of years for the super wealthy. The number of billionaires around the world has doubled in the last 5 years, even as many countries were coping with recession. That's according to a new report which warns about growing disparities. Jim Bolden reports.
Luxury cars, big yachts, bigger homes. It's fast times for the super rich. Even during 5 years of economic shock, the super rich got richer, widening the gap with the very poor. The charity Oxfam is calling for action to address the ever-widening wealth gap, which it says is creating serious economic instability.
First, we need to close tax loopholes that wealthy individuals, extreme wealthy individuals and corporations have been able to use. Second, we need to protect the natural wealth of countries so that it stays in those countries and builds healthy economies. I'm talking about oil, mineral and gas wealth in particular. Third, we need to raise the minimum wage.
A major new report from Oxfam entitled Even It Up includes these claims. The total wealth of today's billionaires increased by 124% in the last 4 years to around $5.4 trillion. The number of billionaires has doubled since the economic crisis began to 1,645 people. A tax of just 1.5% of the world's billionaires could save 23 million lives by investing that money in health care.
Last year, we had $159 billion sitting in tax havens that could have been spent on poverty reduction. That money is more than every single dollar that was spent by every single donor globally on fighting poverty and humanitarian crises around the world.
Of course, some billionaires already agree with paying more tax, including Bill Gates and Warren Buffett, while Pope Francis has stated that, quote, inequality is the root of social evil. But reports like Even It Up often come out and sink without trace. This time, Oxfam says with everyone from President Obama to the Pope to some of the richest people on earth talking about wealth and poverty, there may just be a consensus growing to tackle the extremes.
Coming up, the mom of this little girl says her father didn't return her after his week-long visitation ended. Next on the SSN Evening News, find out why police say they won't intervene.
This is SSN Evening News. You're watching SSN Evening News.
Welcome back to the SSN Evening News. A mother in Missouri is worried tonight about the whereabouts of her 17-month-old daughter. The toddler was last seen when the mother dropped her off for the week with her father. The police haven't issued an Amber Alert because they say little Milan isn't missing. We talked with a family law attorney who says this is fairly common, a dispute over custody that leaves one parent frantic and calls for help practically ignored. Little Milan Sloan is in the middle of a custody fight between her mom and her dad. The two had a verbal custody agreement, but the mom says the situation changed days ago when Milan's dad didn't bring the 17-month-old home.
I've just been really worried about her well-being. I've been worried if she's been eating okay and have she been dressed properly for the weather. I'm just trying to stay afloat to finish my CNA classes, which I'll be graduating tomorrow, and I've just been trying to just stay in a good mood, and I've just been looking for her every day.
Venus Sloan is dealing with a problem that would disturb most any parent. When is her child coming home?
It's always best to have something in writing. That way everyone knows everyone's expectations. And clearly, the law is different in every state.
Tawana Bird is an attorney who specializes in family law. Venus is asking the police to help.
They said they don't want to choose sides because she's in the care of her dad and that I know where she is. And like I told them, I don't know where she is because he drops her off different places, and they just told me to get in contact with Family and Social Services, which Family and Social Services directed me to go back to call the police because they told me the police, since I'm the primary caregiver, they should be able to give me my child back.
And a lot of people get frustrated, especially the non-custodial dads. You know, I don't want child support all in my business. I don't want to judge all in my business. But the reality is, if there's a paternity order and child support through a court, which may or may not be wage withheld through his check, that gives both parents protection regarding their rights as to that child.
What would you like for them to do?
I would like for them to locate my child and bring my child back to me.
You can come up with an agreement, just legitimize it through a court action. Doesn't mean you have to go into court. Sometimes it can all be done on paper. If the parties agree and have an agreed document that they present to the court, a court can sign and enter that document as valid. Everyone knows what their rights are.
Venus Sloan says she and Milan's father are scheduled to appear in court on November 12th for a custody hearing. Good dental health depends on more than just brushing. You have to eat right as well. Some helpful hints when the SSN Evening News continues. Good dental health depends not only on how you treat your teeth, but also what you eat. Despite new ways to correct your smile, dentists say a little prevention goes a long way. Christina Mulchler explains.
With a point and a click, dentists are going digital.
It's totally changed the way we operate in practice. We can literally do a crown start to finish in an hour and a half, depending upon the material that we use.
That's because the use of 3D imaging allows dentists to design and create a color-matched crown right in the office. This machine mills the new crown in minutes while the patient waits.
If you come into me and you're going on vacation and you broke your front tooth off and you're leaving in 3 hours, you can leave with a tooth. That's permanent.
While these advances have reduced the inconvenience and risk of corrective dentistry, the real idea is to avoid having to get a crown. According to the American Dental Association, foods rich in calcium and foods rich in phosphorus help protect and rebuild tooth enamel. And it's back to basics. The ADA recommends brushing twice a day with a soft bristle toothbrush. I'm Christina Muchler reporting.
The U.S. Postal Service is gearing up to ship some 15.5 billion cards, letters, and packages just in time for Christmas. It's also aiming to cash in on the holiday by offering festive stamps, packaging, and even some gift cards. Now, to make sure that your package is delivered on time, the Postal Service is suggesting sending your gifts a little early. Taking advantage of its online postage and free package pickup may help as well. You can go to our website, ssn.tv, for a list of recommended mailing and shipping dates for your holiday cards and gifts. Would you pay up to $1,200 or more for these shoes? Men all over the world are buying them. Shoe designer Giuseppe Zanotti is in demand for his high-end kicks. He launched his first sneaker in 2012, and he credits rapper Kanye West with being the first person to wear one of his styles. The shoes cost between $500 and $1,500. Making children with special needs feel like a star, even if for just a few moments. When the SSN Evening News returns, how this girl helped her mom create a pageant that has grown into something that's truly inspirational.
This is SSN Evening News. This is SSN Evening News.
Every child is precious, regardless of their abilities. The creators of the Angels pageant system say they offer a chance to come together to celebrate the children's sweet spirits. What started out as a simple question, would you like to try on a dress, has turned into something truly inspirational for the children, their families, and volunteers.
She was so smart and she had so much to say, and she never shut up. Her legs didn't work, but her mouth never stopped.
Andrea Thorne and her twin sister Bailey Jo were born at 25 weeks. At just days old, they suffered significant brain bleeds. Both girls survived, but it caused Andrea to develop a condition called hydrocephalus.
That's what Andrea battled her whole life.
The bleeding caused clots in her brain that blocked off the ability of spinal fluid to travel down the spine, and so it accumulated in her brain.
Normally, you can treat it with a shunt, which is basically like a plumbing system. It takes the fluid off the brain and into other parts of the body. But the problem with the shunt systems is that there's a very high rate of failure.
Andrea lived in her wheelchair in and out of hospitals and operating rooms, but she didn't let that stop her.
She never met a stranger. She was hardly ever unhappy. And if it was because of her medical conditions. It wasn't because I'm in a wheelchair and I'm mad.
She liked to do things that we like to do, you know. I think the only reason she liked to hunt was because I like to hunt. Anyway, we got to go on disabled hunts and things like that.
One of her dreams was to be in a pageant, just like her sisters. During a visit to Cindy's pageant dresses, Bailey, Jo, and Lauren were trying on gowns. The shop owner, Cindy Jeffers, asked BJ if Andrea wanted to try on one.
I was watching Andrea. She was watching them, being ever so patient, and I just couldn't get it. You know, I wanted her to feel like they felt, and so I looked at BJ and I said, what about her?
Well, I just told her, I was like, no, that's okay. That's really nice of you. Thank you so much for trying to include her.
Little did BJ know, Andrea overheard and asked her mom if she could try on a gown too.
Probably one of those pivotal moments. Somebody said, it's okay to be different. Even though we had preached that in our own home, it was just like, okay, well, let's do it. What do we have to lose, you know? Miss Cindy, who is the precious store owner that was with us, and she came over and put a little crown on Andrea's head. And, sorry. And that's when she said, "Mama, can I do a pageant?"
Even though BJ realized Andrea just wanted to get dressed up and feel special, her initial reaction was no.
I didn't want her to be made fun of. I didn't want for others to pity her. That's the last thing that I wanted for any of my children.
After a little coaxing, BJ changed her mind.
Why isn't there pageants for children? All children. You know, just because she's got a special name, why isn't there pageants out there like that?
As we drove away, I told my mother-in-law, I said, "I guess, you know, we're going to start a pageant." And she said, "I figured as much."
She told her husband Jonathan about her idea, and much to her surprise, he agreed. He even came up with the name.
It began as the Arkansas Angels pageant because we had no idea that it would grow or that we would even have 5 people there.
Andrea didn't compete in the first pageant. She was having brain surgery. The next year, however, she was healthy enough to participate. BJ says it wasn't until the night before the pageant, when she was gluing feathers and Justin Bieber pictures to Andrea's wheelchair, that she finally got it.
This was probably one of those moments where I knew that this is why I'm here, that it had nothing to do with money or fame or anything that was about anything else but these kids and these families.
Seven-year-old London Giles is a participant in the Angels pageant system. London was diagnosed with autism 3 years ago, and her parents wanted to make sure she didn't grow up with the label.
She is important. She is number one. She is, you know, the star, and that's why we enjoy it. From the time that we walk in, actually parking on the parking lot, the volunteers greet us at our car. Whatever you need, we will be there for you. We will do it for you. Then we enter the church, and everyone is there greeting us with love. We're just so glad you're here. This is all of the wonderful things that she's going to do today. She goes to a makeup room where she gets all made up. You know, volunteers come out and they do her hair, and these are professionals. And then she gets to go amongst her other friends that we get to see once a year and see how they've come along. And again, they're together just being celebrated and all the love.
It makes her feel loved and appreciated for who she is. And I mean, I think that any kid with special needs or without special needs, every kid wants to feel that. They need to feel that in order to help them develop into a whole person.
The clothes, the hair, the makeup, everything is free thanks to donations. While at the pageant, volunteers lead the children through the entire process.
We wanted the families to be able to sit in the audience and be able to watch and be able to just enjoy it rather than trying to be nervous about wrangling their child.
There are no time limits for how long a child can stay on stage. Some show off a particular talent, while some prefer to just bask in the limelight.
Whenever we go through the whole lineup for that age group, they'll come back through one at a time and get crowned. They'll get their prizes and crowned, then we have photo opportunity at that point.
BJ says every child gets a title and a crown.
What we did is we incorporated into our registration that every family gets to kind of pick what their child's title is. And so it's very specific to them. The crown is universal. You do not have to tell a child where a crown goes. They know exactly where it goes. It goes on my head. They know, and you don't have to explain it, and they will just grin from ear to ear.
After her first pageant, Andrea said something her mom will never forget.
And the coolest thing was when we drove away from the pageant that night, she looked at us and she said, "Mama, I won that pageant." And even there was no losers. I mean, that That's exactly what I wanted. I wanted every person that came away from that to feel like they won, because they did.
Andrea competed in 2 more Angels pageants before she passed away in 2013, just 3 days before Christmas.
She ended up having 48 shunts before it was all said and done. And this last revision, or this last malfunction rather, just wasn't caught. And unfortunately, she passed away from shunt malfunction.
After Andrea died, the Thorns thought about quitting the pageants, but they decided it just wasn't an option.
There's too many people involved. There's too many families that have been touched.
We don't take it for granted. We don't take it lightly that we wouldn't be able to experience that if it wasn't for the bravery of the little girl, and then for the people in her life to say, well, let's just do it, rather than say, no, that's impossible.
It's just really neat to see the support all over the world, really. And, you know, it's something that we know that Andrea's legacy will live on, whether there's 1 child that participates or 1 million. You know, people are going to know her name, and they're going to know that we do this in honor of her memory. There's no takebacks, you know, there's no do-overs. You know, this life is it. You know, you get 1 shot. And I think that's one thing that these, you know, these babies remind us, is that we're blessed and that, you know, we got to make it count.
Pageants are now in more than 30 states all around the country, and if you would like more information on them, you can go to our website, that's ssn.tv, and we will link you to the Angels website. When we return, you'll meet a jazz singer who uses her music as a platform to encourage others, so stay with us.
You're watching SSN Evening News. You're watching SSN Evening News.
Jazz originated in African American communities during the late 19th and early 20th centuries. Since then, it's taken on many forms and distinctive styles. Tonight, we meet a singer who is, at heart, a musical ambassador, promoting jazz, classical, and everything in between. Martha Burks is a jazz singer who uses music as a way to express herself.
In jazz, you can take a person where you want them to go. You can take them on a flight with you. So it's just free music.
She was recently in Little Rock, where she performed at a fundraiser to benefit Art Porter Music Education. The foundation provides scholarships to talented Arkansas music students and promotes community service and volunteerism.
I was just thrilled to do this because I had been a part of the kids' lives, of Art's life, Art Jr., I mean, Kenny, Reggie, all of them. I mean, we were like hand in a glove. Yeah, so I thought it was befitting for me to give back some of the knowledge and the musical ability, because I got a lot of it from them, to give it back. So I just said, hey, whatever I can do.
Performing isn't new for Burks. In fact, she's been doing it most of her life.
I used to sing, my brother and I. We used to go around our neighborhood singing. Yeah. Oh, yeah. And then when we got in the band, we had a sax player across the street. My brother played trumpet. I played tuba. So we would do music. And I've been singing, like I said, all my life. I think I came out of the womb singing, probably. Crying anyways. But yeah, that's basically, and of course the church, which is where, you know, you grow up.
Although she admits it doesn't always come easy.
I am a shy person. The stage gives me a platform to express who I really am. And that's a beautiful thing, because most people don't get a chance to do them. So I do me when I'm on stage.
She says you won't see her performing in a fancy dress, a lot of jewelry, or even high-heeled shoes. You only see her.
I want them to see a light in me. is coming from the heart, because I do this because I love it. I want them to see the love that I have for music. That's it.
She recognizes not everyone is into this type of music.
I'm not stopping until I'm done. By the time I finished, they were having more fun than everybody up in here. So music, like you said, it can make you feel good, it can make you feel bad, but it puts you in a happy place. But you gotta be open to the music. If you're not open to it, it's not gonna work. But most people that I've encountered have always been open, and they let me come into their world, and that's how it works for me.
It's inspiring others, though, that keeps her on this stage.
1, 2, 3, And having people come up to you and say, you really touched me. You have really touched me. I proposed to my wife with you singing. You did this. We've been together because we keep coming back to see you and hear you, because you bring that love back. Yeah.
You may not see Martha Burke's name in big lights, but she's okay with that. She wants to serve as a building block for others just starting out.
Be true to your music. Just be true to it. If you falter, which you're going to, get back up. Try it again. Try a little harder. Think about the errors that you made, the mistakes that you made in the music, with your band, and just clean it up. Take a deep breath. Keep it moving.
She says every day is a learning experience. You can't get it back, so take it for what it's worth. And she feels the same way about music.
Makes me happy. Make me feel good.
Coming up next on the SSN Evening News, how one woman is giving cancer patients back a little bit of normalcy in the form of hair. October is Breast Cancer Awareness Month, and tonight we profile a woman who makes wigs for cancer patients and survivors who've lost their hair due to chemotherapy. She says it's her way to give back to her community.
My shop is called My Own, and the reason I named it My Own is, I've worked at many other people's events and things doing makeup and assisting them, and God gave me my very own. I became passionate about getting my own salon and my own makeup line when I became ill. I just wanted to impart into women that you can make it no matter what the obstacles are, and that's how I came up with my shop, My Own. When I had my brain surgery, my hair was shaved off. I was embarrassed of the scar. I knew everybody was looking at my neck, at the top of my head, and, thinking, well, what happened to her? So I started to make these wigs for myself, and people began to admire them. And so, when I came in contact with cancer patients, even through Pampered Boutique, where they honored the women, I just began to make them wigs, and I would give them away. And then people would come to me, well, would you make me a wig? I'll pay you for it. So that's kind of how I got into it.
I've been dealing with breast cancer for the last year and a half. Okay, it took me down through there. I really didn't want to live behind it. I was ready to give up, but my daughter wouldn't let me give up. When I started the chemo, all my hairs just started coming out. So I didn't have no hair. I lost a lot of weight. I wasn't eating. I just wasn't doing nothing but laying around sleeping, doing a lot of sleeping. And I just couldn't come out the house looking the way I was looking. Because, you got to wear a hat or scarf or something on your head everywhere you go.
I have alopecia areata. Alopecia areata is an immune disease that affects the hair follicles. I inherited from my mom. I went to a dermatologist and I got treated for it. steroids, injections, creams. My hair grew back over the period of time for about 10 years. Then I noticed that the alopecia reoccurred again. My self-esteem was never affected by it, but I was a little apprehensive as to show people my scalp. I've done the wigs, I've done the weaves, I've done the scarves, I've done the caps, I've done everything to cover up.
I've been making the wigs probably about 5 years now for other people. I am gluing the hair to this spandex cap. And a lot of my cancer patients, they like the spandex cap better because it's secure and it has a band on it.
The wig does a lot for me. It just brings out the inner me.
Every woman wants to feel beautiful and look beautiful. You know, that's our makeup, that's who we are. And a wig will bring that confidence out in you. I have on a wig right now.
I didn't think I could look like this. You know, I wasn't feeling good when I came to you, but I have a burst of energy. And I mean, you know, I just look good. I can go out now. So that's some of the responses. I'm just spraying a circle so that I can put her wig on. And when I put her wig on, I'm just gonna sew it to her perimeters, just to the outer circle.
When she opened this shop, I was so excited. I've been telling everybody, I need to come see Miss Anitra. She did my lashes, she does makeup, she does it, you know, whatever it is, because I want them to experience not only her making them over, making them beautiful, but to experience her beautiful spirit and to be able to get a word from her, because she gives it to everybody freely. She doesn't care who you are, you know, so she's excited to talk to you. She's excited to give of herself freely.
I have not let the disease validate me as a woman who I am. Women don't need hair to validate who they are, because you can have a head full of healthy hair and be gorgeous on the outside, but what's inside will reflect what's on the outside of you. So when I embraced that and the beauty within me, it made me feel like I am a woman where I'm rounded from my head to my toe. You know, from the crown of my head to the bottom of my feet. And God said a woman's hair is our glory. But when things happen genetically, then that affects your glory.
Anitra, being such a God-fearing woman, she just instantly was able to connect and tell me things that I needed to hear to uplift me at that time. She told me about my life and how I needed to carry myself and how I inspire people. And you know, when you have issues yourself, you don't think that you're inspiring or enlightening to anyone.
Just because you've had a few nightmares, don't stop dreaming. And that's my whole thing. I'm not gonna stop dreaming. Even if I'm not walking tomorrow, I'm still gonna make my wigs. I'm still gonna make women beautiful. I'm still gonna make them feel good about themselves. That's just what I do. It's in me. And you know, that's my meat. And to do, that's the will of God for my life. And that's healing to me.
So encouraging. A look at today's top stories when the SSN Evening News continues.
This is SSN Evening News. You're watching SSN Evening News.
Popped up. Sandoval in foul territory. Giants win.
Well, the San Francisco Giants are the World Series champions. The Giants beat the Kansas City Royals 3-2 in the final game last night. This is the third time, can you believe it? The Giants have won the World Series in just the last 5 years. Finally tonight, let's look at our top stories. A small plane crashed into a building today in Wichita, Kansas, killing 4 people. The Federal Aviation Administration says the plane lost an engine during takeoff. Human trials are now underway for an Ebola vaccine. 120 people will receive that vaccine, and researchers will figure out if it's safe, and they'll determine the correct dosage as well. Lava from a volcano on the Big Island of Hawaii could swallow more than a dozen homes in the next few days. That slow-moving flow started back in June when when a crater vented, and that released the lava. That is it for the SSN Evening News tonight. We thank you for joining us. I'm Vicki Newton.